Okay. Well, I guess it's that time of the year, right? It's almost Halloween. It's spooky. And you know what also is spooky? Freaking ransomware is spooky. Blackmails are spooky. Well, there is one rule that applies to both ransomware and blackmail: no negotiations. Actually, ransomware attacks frequently use blackmail as part of their extortion technique. And here's some crucial elements about the relationship between ransomware and blackmail. Never agree to terms. Even if it's a Jason knocking at your door, like, never agree to terms. There is no bargaining with terrorists. They can kidnap a member of your family, which is where the RCMP comes in, right? When it comes to ransomware, if the consequences aren't too great, it's mostly about your psychological resilience. So, practice meditation. Negotiation with terrorists has similarities in cybersecurity, notably in the case of ransomware assaults. And here's how the concepts of negotiation, refusal to bargain, and the ramifications of such actions relate to cybersecurity. So, the Canadian government warns against paying ransoms, as doing so not only perpetuates the ransomware model but also does not ensure data recovery. Victims are encouraged to report incidences to law enforcement and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. Unauthorized use of computer systems, especially those implicated in ransomware attacks, is punishable under Section 342.1 of the Criminal Code. In Canadian criminal law, blackmail is legally referred to as, quote marks, extortion, and is covered under Section 346 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Offenders might face imprisonment of up to 10 years for fraudulent conduct relating to computer services. And this legal framework provides a basis for prosecuting cybercriminals involved in ransomware activity. The Canadian government is also working on new legislation to improve cybersecurity safeguards in key infrastructure sectors. And this proposed framework would help strengthen baseline cybersecurity policies and provide tools for responding to emergent cyber threats like ransomware. It's also worth noting that extortion carries severe consequences in Canada. Individuals who are convicted of extortion face up to 14 years in prison, depending on the circumstances. And the act of making an unjustified demand with threats is sufficient to constitute extortion, regardless of whether the individual acts on it. Paying ransoms, like talking with terrorists, can create a vicious cycle in which hackers continue to undertake assaults because they believe they can profit from their illegal operations. And this is especially true in the changing landscape of ransomware as service, or RAS, which lowers the hurdles to entry into cybercrime. Well, ransomware is increasingly being utilized as a weapon in cyber war. State-sponsored entities may use ransomware to disrupt hostile infrastructure. It can be used to cause unrest and economic damage in the target country. Ransomware attacks may act as a distraction or smokescreen for other cyber operations. And of course, there are evidence that certain ransomware attacks could have political or geopolitical motivations. Companies that reduced operations in Russia during the invasion of Ukraine were more vulnerable to ransomware attacks from Russia-based groups. An analysis of stolen internal correspondence from a major ransomware gang revealed ties to the Kremlin. State-sponsored actors, especially those from Russia, are estimated to pose serious strategic threats to countries like Canada using cyber capabilities. The Russian government protects ransomware gangs from internal and global prosecution. As Western law enforcement has been more aggressive in its pursuit of cybercriminals, this protection has grown in value. In exchange, the Kremlin gains from plausible deniability for state-sponsored cyber activities. And ideology appears to be the most powerful motivator in the so-called RICE system, or reward, ideology, coercion, or ego framework. Therefore, Putin's Russia is very likely to continue attacking Western democracies via electronic communications, including those related to democratic elections. So, rise of ransomware as service. Many ransomware groups use a RAS model, allowing other criminals to use their ransomware in exchange for a portion of the payment. And this has resulted in a rise in ransomware assaults by lowering the barrier to entry for attackers. And many current ransomware gangs, including Lockbit and Conti, use double extortion tactics. They encrypt data, exfiltrate crucial information, and threaten to disclose it if the ransomware is not paid. And just for your information, some attackers establish demands of approximately 3% of the target company's annual revenue. And ransomware for 2023 ranged from $700,000 and in between $700,000 and $1.5 million. WannaCry in 2017 was one of the largest and most destructive ransomware attacks ever, infecting over 200,000 systems in 150 countries. Then, of course, the famous Colonial Pipeline attack, which targeted the largest fuel pipeline in the United States, causing fuel shortages along the East Coast and prompting a declaration of emergency in 17 states. In the end, the company paid $4.4 million ransom, which was partially recovered later. CryptoLocker opened in the new era of ransomware attacks by being among the first to demand Bitcoin ransom payments. It spread through email phishing efforts. As I constantly advise, don't click excessively, and victims were extorted for an estimated $3 million. There was also NotPetya in 2017, REvil attacks in between 2019 and 2021, and most recently, Conti attack on Costa Rica 2022, which targeted multiple Costa Rican agencies. Cybersecurity and Cyberwar, when it comes to book What Everyone Needs to Know by P.W. Singer and Alan Friedman, and so on. And also, Ransomware Revealed, a beginner's guide to protecting and recovering from ransomware attacks by Nihada Hassan. Then also Ransomware Defending Against Digital Extortion by Alan Lisks and Timothy Gallo. The ransomware book Understand, Prevent, Recover, which was my choice, just to let you know. Alan Lisk is a prominent expert on ransomware and cybersecurity. He has over 20 years of experience in ransomware and information security, and he's also working as a ransomware expert at Recorded Future. He's frequently quoted as an expert in major news sites like the Washington Post, Bloomberg, the New York Times, and NBC News, and is regarded as a leading voice in ransomware and intelligence security. According to Bitdefender, perhaps one of the greatest security softwares available, here are some crucial elements concerning ransomware protection. Multi-layer defense. Implement advanced endpoint and network security mechanisms. Implement features such as network segmentation and real-time monitoring to detect potential threats early. Implement robust email screening and anti-spam technology. Protect against harmful links and attachments, particularly on mobile devices. Create immutable backups and use 3-2-1 backup technique for redundancy. Also, regularly verify backup integrity and test restore methods. Use the concept of least privilege and multi-factor authentication. Limit access to sensitive systems and data, and so on. Long story short, Bitdefender emphasizes a complete approach that combines preventive measures, real-time protection, and recovery capabilities to defend against ransomware attacks. Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity recognizes ransomware as the most disruptive and common cyber threat to Canadians and enterprises. In its 2023-24 National Cyber Threat Assessment, the Cyber Center believes that ransomware remains the most likely and disruptive cyber threat activity affecting Canadians. They have produced a ransomware playbook covering preventative and response strategies for organizations. And at the end, the psychological impact of ransomware attacks is frequently underestimated and can last long after the technical components of the crisis are rectified. Organizations are increasingly recognizing the need to address these mental health implications as part of their overall event response and recovery plans. What I have to say is not new, but it needs repeating. Practice excellent IT hygiene by keeping operating systems, software, and firmware up to date and patched, using strong, unique passwords for all accounts, and implementing multi-factor authentication. Use email filters to detect phishing and spam, and don't click on questionable links or open attachments from unfamiliar sources. Implement email security measures like URL screening and attachment sandboxing. Ransomware has a particularly severe impact on small and medium-sized organizations, which frequently lack strong protection safeguards and financial capacity to recover. Overall, ransomware can have devastating and long-term impacts on all elements of a company's operation and survival. Again, the attacker can only be right once, so keep your system up to date, stay resilient, and most importantly, stay selective. Bye-bye.